the local planning board. The chair, Jim Carbon, is not here, so I'm standing in his place. So, one, I'd like to have a call to order. It's 9:30, and a pledge allegiance to the flag is next.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, next on to Liz for the roll call.
Mr. Dave Crawford.
Here.
Matt Hutmaker.
Here.
Tara Johnson. Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you. Next, do I have a motion to approve the prior meeting minutes?
Mr. Chair, we're going to be on the Planning, Zoning, Variance Board sitting as the LPA. So we won't have any minutes. Okay. We would be going into this, and if I could indulge for a minute and just give a little background.
I was going to get to that.
Thank you. Well, I just didn't want to mix the two agendas.
Okay.
So this board acts as what's known as the local planning agency, or LPA, in certain circumstances. This is statutorily driven by Florida law. Importantly, whenever there's a comprehensive plan update, as you see on the screens in front of you, it's required that it come before you for recommendation, review and recommendation up to the town council as the final decision maker. You'll have all that materials in front of you, and we have one of our consultant colleagues, Hadley Peterson, who's in the audience, will be taking over in a minute. Mr. Harpering will do an introduction, but importantly, this is a public hearing. So, Mr. Chair, I would invite you to open the public hearing in a minute. As we move through it, we'll have a presentation. Then you would ask for any comments or questions, concerns from the public. Then close the public hearing, and at that time, move for a motion to recommend approval or whatever. So that's the outline. With that, and then, Mr. Chair, I'd encourage you to open the public hearing.
Okay. I'd like to open up the public hearing at this point. Thank you, Peter.
Yes, sir.
And do we have any comments first, Jim?
Yep. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Board. At this time, I don't have anything additional to add procedurally as to what our town, other than what our town attorney said. Though at the board's pleasure, I'd like to bring up Hadley Peterson, who is with Kimley Horn. I've worked very closely with Hadley and her team over, it probably seems like decades, but it's only been a few years. But we actually meet and speak very frequently on a variety of different topics because she's definitely the subject matter expert in these areas. So she's going to have a presentation for the board sitting as the LPA relative to the comprehensive plan update. And if there's any questions, either as we go along or at the end, that will be completely appropriate, and then we can proceed from there. So thank you, and Hadley. Hadley comes down from Tallahassee, so thank you.
Long drive this morning.
Well, I got to come up yesterday, so it was easy. But like Jim mentioned, my name is Hadley Peterson with Kimley Horn. We've been working with the town for several years on planning and zoning efforts. I'm here today to talk about the comprehensive plan update. Clicker works better if you bring it up to the podium. Okay, so just a little background in comprehensive planning. This is required by Florida statute, so required by Florida law, Chapter 163. So every 8 years, a jurisdiction is required to look at their comprehensive plan and say, yes, things have changed, we need to make updates, or no, things have not changed, we're good to go for another 8 years. And so in the case of Indian River Shores, just due to changes in statute over the last several years, there were some recommendations that we need to make to update this to be compliant with Florida statutes. Once you have your comprehensive plan, this trickles down into what you all work with more closely, the Land Development Code. So the Land Development Code is, the implementation of this plan, essentially. A comprehensive plan at a very high level is the highest expression of where the community wants to go in the long range. So when we talk about planning horizons, we're talking about how long this plan is looking ahead for. So this plan has a 10-year planning horizon looking ahead until 2035 and a 20-year plan horizon looking ahead until 2045. And as part of that, this is the compass that really helps guide decision-making, help guide, who the town's partnering with, what the priorities are, where are we investing, and all of that's reflected in policies. And again, those policies are then implemented through actions such as the Land Development Code. The comprehensive plan has 9 elements. As part of this update, we are not adding or removing any elements. These are all required by state. So there's no optional elements in here, strictly what is required by the state. Future land use, acts as typically the North Star for the document, where you want to grow, what type of growth, and then, implemented through the other elements. We'll walk through each one briefly here today.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
And I was surprised it didn't have in there impact on local government. Because Florida passes lots of different laws and stuff like that, and I would have thought that would have been like the 10th. But
so intergovernmental coordination gets that at that a little bit, and we'll talk about that towards the end. And if there's anything that you don't see reflected in there, we can talk through what that looks like. So this process we kicked off a year ago with town staff, and what we first did is essentially reviewed all the statutory changes that have happened since the plan was last updated to see what we needed to change to be in compliance with statute, and we went through every single policy in your current plan to see if anything needed to be changed given the recent Land Development Code update, given recent, priorities of Indian River County. Based off of that, we did what is called data inventory and analysis. So this is required. It's basically going through county level plans, state level plans, local level of service, and really documenting the data that exists so that your recommendations are based off of data. Then we drafted the goals, objectives, and policies, which you all received prior to this meeting. Next steps from here, today's the LPA hearing. It'll then go to town council for recommendation for transmittal, which means recommendation to send it to the state. And then the state has it for about 3 months, provides comments, feedback, and then we can adopt the plan. So that's what the next piece of this process looks like. So we're right at the tail end of it. Okay. So the year-based updates, these again are the statutory required updates. And we were looking at everything that since your last plan was adopted. So the version that you currently are using was adopted in 2021. So we accounted for the sessions since then. And what mostly that accounts for is Live Local Act passed 2 years ago, and septic to sewer related to the BMAP passed 2 years ago as well. So there's some policies that needed to be updated in those elements accordingly to just align with statutory requirements. Also, as of 2 years ago, a new requirement is to have that 2035 10-year and 2045 20-year. Previously, we were just looking at the 20-year, but this provides, some incremental movement in the right direction. And so this was updated to include those planning horizons as well. So the bulk of the changes to your comprehensive plan are strictly because they are required by statute. Here and there, like I mentioned, there are some things that because the Land Development Code was updated prior to the comp plan that we just updated to keep consistent with the way the town is operating today. So largely a consistency and compliance activity. Yep.
Sorry, can I stop you for a minute on consistency with statutory requirements? When I was looking through all of the materials, there was, in certain circumstances, just passing reference to sort of aquatic preserve, but it was more of a hypothetical, to the extent sort of there's an aquatic preserve, it needs to be complied with, but all of the river in Indian River shores is designated as an aquatic preserve. as well as a waterway of specific concern, I think is what they call it, for the state. And there are very specific aquatic preserve requirements and restrictions on what individuals can do along an aquatic preserve. And I didn't really see, and I happen to know that there's been some newer requirements since 2021, and I didn't see in this whole packet any reference to those specifically. So I wanted to, get an update on that with respect to whether those have been specifically incorporated.
Yes.
So that the requirements flow through our permitting process and everything else, because it's very important.
Yes, and so the answer is twofold, right? The comprehensive plan is this level up here, and then the implementation as far as how it's regulated through permitting process is this level down here, which is with your land development code. And so the comprehensive plan has been updated for all state requirements and kind of giving it the guiding policy language. So all the conservation requirements are in the conservation element. The specifics of how that's implemented on the ground are housed in your land development code. So it's provided, by reference, so that if you wanted to change something in the future about that process, you can just update your land development code rather than having to update everything. I don't know, Jim, town manager, if you want to add anything.
No, said
Okay.
it way more articulate than I could ever. So thank you for that. And I would just note from an internal standpoint, we again look at the comp plan as this very high-level overriding guidance, and then just to amplify Hadley's point, within the building department itself is the location where, during the process of anything actual that is occurring, i.e., construction, mitigation, remediation, whatever it happens to be, that's when all of the permitting boxes, so to speak, have to be checked, not just for the town land development code items, and I can defer to the town attorney, but not just for our local ordinance items, but also that long amalgam of acronyms, whether it's Army Corps of Engineers, DEP, DOT, and any of the other state agencies that, that would apply, to include the county locally, because we do have a coordination with them, of course, because we share, we share the river and jungle trail. But I think that, again, I think it's the overall versus the implementation, which would, as Hadley accurately noted, much briefer than I did, would be contained in the LDC.
And we'll talk through both conservation and coastal management, and we can talk through the policies that are in here that address the conservation of lands, and especially coastal and the barrier island and the lagoon and the river. So we can go through those too to make sure that you get the big picture of how this is up here, and then we'll kind of talk through the connections it has with the LDC. So I can outline that for you.
Thank you for that clarification. It was a little confusing, because probably in those sections, there are some specifics referenced.
Yes.
And so that's what made me concerned that we were missing something, but
Yes, of
it
course.
sounds like we get it later, so, in the process. That sounds good.
Okay, so just the format for the next, couple minutes here is just going through each element individually. So future land use, like I mentioned, this is the guiding kind of direction of it. This, tells you what type of lands you have and where. So as part of this, required by the state is looking at population projections. So this is through BEBR, which is the University of Florida Bureau of Economic and Business Research. This is their medium population projection. So they provide 3 options: a low, a medium, and a high. And medium is in line with the type of growth Indian River Shores has experienced for the last 10 years. And so what that looks like is, between now and 10 years from now, you'll see more growth with an average of about 6% over the 10-year period, and then it tapers down, getting closer to the 2.5% out towards 2045, looking ahead to 2050. So what that realistically means is 800 more residents are going to come here in the next 20 years. And this accounts for seasonal population projections as well, acknowledging that that would be on the high end seasonally when you have more population here. The future land use element at this time doesn't recommend any land use changes, because what you have today, the land use categories are working well for you, but just continues to carry forward the town's vision of preserving the character and natural resources that you have today. And with that, the transportation element takes...
I just have
yes,
a
sir?
question.
Yep.
I know that most of the population growth, and that maybe this is for Jim, most of the population growth is going to be multifamily. And because we don't have much institutional or commercial or religious land, so it's got to be on the multifamily. Do we have, how many acres do we have that you can still develop? Because even with the live local, it has three residents per acre. I mean, 3 houses per acre.
Yeah. I guess to be as least specific as possible, I think I could say de minimis. And I think the way that I look at this, to some extent, has to do with the fact, really it's twofold. One, we do have a finite amount of land. Some of the land that we see that's developed within gated communities is going to be single family that is left. In fact, you'll recall the River Club development piece, that went from, ironically, multifamily to single family. Because of the dynamic and the needs, and really I think the prospective desires of what the community would be. So I think we have that one piece, which is a finite amount of land. We don't see a lot of multifamily being torn down, and the one example of the converse. The other piece, though, is that to some extent, over time, as a practical reality, many two-family doors or residents, so to speak, become one family, especially in our demographic because of a death for a period of time. So to me, looking at that 800 based on the current type of development that we have, whether it is single family or the fair amount of multifamilies that we have, to me, it doesn't reflect an exodus from someplace else here. I think it just reflects more of a natural flow over time, which then I also think is reflected in the progressively lower percentages as we see over time. I like to be here in 2050 to report on that personally.
And we'll talk a little bit more about housing on the next slide too, but Jim just answered it basically. But so transportation, the main point of this element really is to continue to coordinate with other agencies, whether it's FDOT, whether it's the county, to ensure that we have safe, coordinated transportation options. So as part of this, we look at the level of service on your roadways. There's no impacts that population would have that would require us to change a level of service on the roadway. Everything will still be operating within the level of service requirement by 2045. And then we additionally just addressed, non-motorized travel, which essentially is making sure that people can bike on the roadways safely and, walk crosswalks in the right places. But again, just due to the nature of this jurisdiction, a lot of the implementation of these policies, again, are through partnership with other agencies such as the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization from the transportation side, FDOT, and the county. And so the updates in this element are purely to really outline those types of relationships and who's actually able to give that infrastructure. Housing, like we mentioned, today is mostly single-family detached. We are expected to see multifamily units, specifically townhomes. We use a source called Schimberg Center for Housing Studies for this data, and they're able to really tell you, based on what we've seen development-wise, this is the type of development that's projected. And so for the case of Indian River Shore, that's still single-family detached, and townhomes. And so again, while there's finite land, some of this will come in the form of redevelopment and slow progressive growth based off of that 800 distributed over, the 20 years. Additionally, we have a property rights element. It was not changed. That was recently adopted here in the town 2 years ago to be compliant when that statute was updated, and so there was no need to edit that property rights element. So that you'll see in your version as unchanged. Public facilities and capital improvements is the portion of the document that talks through adopted level of service standards for water, for sewer, and this, again, requires a lot of partnership with entities other than the town for those services. So the way that these policies are worded and implemented is to coordinate with the applicable agency. Additionally, this is where pollutant load comes into play, so complying with the Indian River Lagoon Protection Program and reducing the town's pollutant. Again, partnership with the county water management district and other entities there, but that is included as an update here in this element. And then essentially, this requires, the comprehensive plan requires to maintain a schedule of capital improvement projects that will continue to meet the needs of level of service as you see those 800 residents. And so the currently adopted CIP, is incorporated into this. Coastal management, so this is where we start touching on some of those conservation policies like we discussed. The big statute change that's reflected here are the peril of flood requirements, and so this is required by state statute, brings the comp plan up to par with those requirements. There's also policies in here that address the protection and restoration of the barrier island beach and dune systems, and continues to, in the case of Indian River Shores, the LDC, the Land Development Code, was updated to address coastal development within the coastal high hazard area prior to the comp plan being updated. So the updates that were done here are now aligning with what your building official is actually doing on the ground when it comes to permitting in the coastal zone. And so your policies here now reflect that, which are both meet statute and are aligned with what type of development you want to see along your coast. Additionally, this is updated to comply with Indian River County in terms of ensuring a under 12-hour hurricane evacuation time and rapid post-disaster response and redevelopment. So again, there's a lot of policies throughout here that are not going to be implemented by Indian River Shores alone, but working with your county, water management district, et cetera, to really ensure the implementation of these. Conservation in here has been updated to include air pollution, which was not in there before, and energy. So this is now, largely preserving natural resources through development and addresses key areas such as Indian River Shores Barrier Island and the Indian River Lagoon. But there's also policy in here about the jungle trail that connects with the county. Many of these updates, again, were done in the Land Development Code a year and a half ago, and so the comp plan is now just matches what your Land Development Code is doing. Recreation and open space is required by the state that there is a provision of recreation and open space to residents. In the case of the town, this is largely through HOAs, through private development, and so this has been updated to reflect that. Previously, the comp plan had level of service for multiple different recreation categories, and so we have collapsed those to just provide a recommendation for acreage of recreation and open space to ensure that it's, something that the town can meet. And with that, there's also partnering with agencies. So as part of your provision of recreation and open space are the beach access that is managed by the town, the trail that's partnered with the county, as well as private provision of, places from HOAs and gated communities. All of that's, included here and updated to reflect what is actually happening today. And then intergovernmental coordination is where it kind of houses the majority of the policies that are just about meeting to get things done together, ensuring effective and efficient communication on joint goals. So, currently the town works with local jurisdictions and agencies to meet these goals, and so it's really a continuation of the good work that we're doing. There's some things that are now required due to recent updates. So when the Indian River Lagoon BMAP, or Basin Management Action Plan, was updated in 2023, that requires biannual coordination meetings with the city of Vero Beach and Indian River County. So this has been updated to include any of those required interjurisdictional conversations, and so you'll see that reflected in here as well. This also includes, recommendations to work with DEP and the Water Management District on conservation issues, FDOT on transportation. So really is kind of a clearinghouse for all the ways that we are a good partner to other organizations and agencies. And with that, I know I went over a lot of information in a short amount of time, but happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add one thing and then turn it back to the board. Ms. Bowman had asked about some the higher level things and the implementation, and I just want to provide a couple of very brief examples from what we just talked about relative to really both conservation, public facilities, and the intergovernmental coordination. And again, these are just for examples for the excuse me, for the board. We're both fortunate and challenged relative to our great ability to be self-sustaining in a lot of ways, but we do require a lot of coordination and cooperation with other entities, of course, as well, because DOT controls A1A, the City of Vero Beach is our wastewater and reuse water provider, we have private entities, FPL, and so on. But from a practical standpoint, some of the things that you have seen that really come from these overall concepts in the comprehensive plan are the stormwater projects that we both have done, which now include the Miami curbing and either the link up to the existing stormwater system, or installation of baffle boxes because of the water, going into the lagoon. We'll also see that process, as well as some of the compliance with HB 1379. That's the septic to sewer piece that Hadley referred to earlier. The town is just about to place out to bid and enter into an intergovernmental coordination and cooperation agreement with the City of Vero Beach. We are going to be completely repaving and rebuilding for stormwater purposes Beachcomber and Pebble Lane, to include the installation of Miami curbing and so on, tying in with a DOT and FDEP drainage systems. But coordinated with that, to help the residents out, we're going to be working with the City of Vero Beach to install the sanitary central sewer systems at the same time. We know that there's a legal requirement for the property owner to do so. We're neither the property owner nor are we the provider. So there was very little that the town could do from a practical standpoint. But the one thing we were able to do, and we've been working on this really since 2023, is to coordinate these. We've got 2 roads going out at the same time, general contractor, and the city's going to be hooking up all of those homes to the central sewer system as part of that. And as an aside, with that, because of the relatively limited number of properties that we have to address, certainly compared to others, thankfully, it'll probably be less than 140 or so total in the town. We're going to continue that cooperation piece. So it really does tie into a lot of those things. And I only mention those because sometimes we can talk about the comprehensive plan and they're just clouds floating over here and there. But from that, we do draw the direction and some of the guidance to go ahead and do that. And I just want to mention those are some of the practical things that we're doing now that actually will help us comply with the goals we actually set. So I'm sorry, and I'll turn it back over. I just wanted to mention that.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
They're not. Okay, does anybody on the board have any questions, comments? Does
Not
the,
anything else, thank you.
okay. Does the public, you've heard everything, do you have any questions, comments, insights?
It was actually very entertaining, I think. And thoughtful. I think you don't know that you live in Shangri-La because you have a town boundary that is manageable. You're landlocked. You have a thoughtful population. You have a thoughtful board, and they're one of the best companies in the state that does the land planning. So it really is. You can make meaningful decisions that have effects. Whereas if you go to Orange County, Florida, where's the boundary? You know, it's just crazy. So
I'd like to mention that that endorsement was not paid for by anyone. Thank you.
But we probably ought to enter your name into the record because I think somebody would appreciate that endorsement.
We'll have Liz get that information before he leaves. He'll be here for the next hearing. You know who he is. You know who he is.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I guess our next step is to make a motion to approve the contents of this document as written.
Yes, sir, that would be correct.
I'll make a motion to approve the contents as written.
Do I have a second?
I will second with a clarification, if that's okay?
Yes.
Just to clarify, we are voting on the changes to, the updates to the town's comprehensive plan as indicated here with the changes indicated in the document. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I can briefly explain it, I'm going to have Hadley fill in if I am off on any of the procedure aspect of this. So what you have in your packet is you have in the very front an ordinance. Because this is a legal change, it has to be done by ordinance. That's the empowering thing you see in the very front of your packet, ordinance proposed 583. Backing that up, and you will see about halfway down the fourth whereas, Exhibit A and Exhibit B, the way that we've done this is those are the actual substance of the changes. So the ordinance is we approve it, send it up to Tallahassee, here's the changes in number 2 and number 3. And for the benefit of this board, procedurally, this is how it works. It will go from here tomorrow to our town council for a first reading. They will take in the recommendation of this board. Hopefully we will have an approval at that time. Hadley will be back to answer any questions that they might have. They then would approve it, assuming, and it would go to the state of Florida, as you mentioned, Department of Commerce, or Florida Commerce as it's now called. And they probably will have that done, if you were to expect with this one, between 30 and 60 days?
Yes, they are allowed up till 90, but with the amount of changes in these being ear-based, we see closer to the 30, 60-day mark. Essentially what happens is Florida Commerce sends it out to all reviewing agencies, which means it goes to DEP, it goes to Florida Commerce, it goes to DOT, and it also goes to the county, the Water Management District. So any of those entities that have any comments are able to provide them at that time. Again, given the nature of what this includes, those are likely to be very minimal, if anything. And then it would come back for adoption to town council.
And so I just wanted to conclude with, it will come back, assuming there are not any comments, or whatever comments might come back from the state of Florida, those would be provided back to the town council. The town council would have those. They will review those and either make the modification or approve them. You actually could approve over the recommendation of the state of Florida, but most places don't. And I also just want to mention this as well, as Hadley said, this is a procedure, a process that, although it's happening right now, it really never stops. And as Jim has said, you know, he's been in communication with Hadley. I think he's got her on speed dial. But really, if you've got a business background and you've seen strategic plans from big organizations, you know, this is a requirement that the state of Florida created decades ago, quite frankly now, for every city and town and county to create this strategic plan. So we create it, we have it done, we are required to update it. Many places update them more often, every 2, 3, 4 years as things come up. And then you have the implementation, and that is also where Hadley and her firm have helped us with new ordinances to fill in those things in the comprehensive plan. So you will still see things over the next months and years reflecting these changes, but we're very appreciative, staff, our consultant, on you guys taking time reviewing this. So that's the scope of it. I know you have a motion. I think your motion was appropriately qualified and seconded. So I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, thank you for that explanation. Yeah, we understand it's a living document.
Correct.
There's always some promulgation of rules and regulations from somebody in Florida, county, and everywhere else. Okay, accepting of your condition.
Right, so just to clarify that, as I understand it, the motion is to approve the updates to the comprehensive plan of the township, as well as the future land use map that has been updated.
It's underlying of this.
Right, so those are two documents, and we are, that's what we are considering today. Yes, correct?
That's correct.
And if that was the motion to approve both those two documents, the land use plan and the future land use map, I second that motion.
I think that's accurate.
Thank you for that clarification. I vote yes, so we have 3.
Yeah, well, you do have 3, so.
And a quorum.
I think at this point it would be appropriate for our clerk to take a roll call vote, just to get it on the record.
Get it on the record. Mr. Crawford?
Aye.
Mr. Hutmaker?
Yes.
Ms. Bowman?
Yes.
All right, that's a unanimous approval. So with that, board, this will be in front of the town council tomorrow night. And as I said, Hadley will be there to answer any questions they have, but that would conclude this board acting as the local planning agency. We will now immediately move into the planning and zoning as soon as you call this to close.